Today, we are joined by Bruce Beckloff, the CEO of Bloc Ventures, a private investment company set up in 2013 as an early stage investor in the deep tech sector. Bruce, delighted to have you. Would you be kind enough to introduce yourself and Bloc Ventures?
Certainly, and Richard and Edison, thank you for taking the time today. So Bloc Ventures was set up by myself and a gentleman named David Leffley. We set it up, as you mentioned, in 2013 to really go after the early stage deep tech market in both the UK and Europe. David and I were running our respective corporate venturing units at Vodafone and Arm, David at Vodafone and myself at Arm. I mean, David spent 14 years at Vodafone, really stayed more on the technical side, was chief technology economist, really helped with the 3G rollout when it was happening in the early 2000s, and actually ended up taking over the corporate venturing activity. Myself, I spent 12 years at Arm, the microprocessor guys, variety of careers there, again in the strategic marketing arena, and then ending up owning the corporate development team, which had overall corporate strategy, M&A, and I formalized the venturing activity. We set up Bloc really to try to exploit the what we thought was quite an exciting market in Europe. When we were at our venturing units, we saw in the US you had a really quite specialized group of investors that were investing in deep technology, and where the UK had been much more financially focused in the venture market, we thought there was an opportunity to take some real deep tech specialisms and then go into that industry. And really, since then, we've invested in 11 companies over the years. We've deployed just under 22 million pounds. We've raised just under 30 million pounds of capital into Bloc. We think there's quite a exciting horizons coming on. There's lots of opportunity in the deep tech market here in the UK and Europe, and Bloc's pretty well positioned to exploit that.
Well, thank you. You've explained that deep tech requires specialist investment expertise and a longer than usual investment horizon. So if I can ask, why have you chosen to invest in deep tech, and what makes, why will Bloc succeed?
Sure. I think, deep tech, especially in the UK and Europe, again, as I said previous, there was a gap. I mean, what's interesting about the UK and Europe is we have, the top universities of the world here churning out the top technologies, turning out, students that are, the talent. Yet we don't have the capital going into deep technology. We don't have the specialists that are able to help those startups move from, the innovation stage into real commercialization stage. So what Bloc saw was this opportunity to use our expertise. I mean, if you look around the team at Bloc, we probably have over 100 years of actual operational expertise before we even get into the investment opportunities and the investment expertise in Bloc. So what we want to do here is not only use our expertise to find the good tech, so before investing, and we do our own due diligence, we do our own analysis, but then after we invest, we want to use what we've learned to help these startups grow into sizable SMEs and such. And really that comes from the fact that the Bloc team has transacted globally. And for any startup, the key aspect of a life cycle is not so much can you raise money, it's really about, can I actually sign a purchase order? Can I get commercial traction? And that's where we spend a lot of time helping our own startups, is can we actually start to interact with the larger industrial players around the globe? But if you look at deep tech itself, it's quite an interesting market. We like to refer to it or think of it as, think of oil and gas or pharma. And a lot of the larger technology companies have decided to outsource that R&D development. So they don't want to try to find the new gold mine or something like that. They want to wait till that mine is mature and actually producing, and then it gets slotted in. Deep tech is very similar. The larger corporates don't want that risk on their own balance sheet and their own OpEx. So what they're looking for is for startups to create that innovation, create those corporates, and then slot into their product portfolio. So it makes a very natural life cycle for a startup in deep tech, as long as you can get past the initial stages, which is the ideation, productization, commercialization phase. And for Block, again, what we think is what a lot of industrial, or not industrial, industry players would look as risky. Block sees it as, we're able to de-risk it, again, because of our ability to look at the technology before, our ability to help the technology after. And so for something that someone would deem risky, we find it a much less risky proposition. And it's a pretty untapped market. There, although growing number of deep tech VCs here in Europe, we still feel we're pretty differentiated in this market.
And certainly, I would say that not only deep tech, but European venture capital as a whole really does seem to be coming of age now as a sector, with unicorns being created and exited at an ever increasing rate. How do you see the UK and European VC sector evolving from where we are today?
Yeah, I see only continuing improvement. I mean, even in the last 10 years that we've been at ARM, Vodafone, and working on Block, the VC industry has transformed incredibly. We always try to get compared to the US, and let's face it, the US had a much more mature technology market, and therefore they've been doing it for a longer time. So the comparison is not fair. But over the last 20 years, the maturity of the VC market has increased tremendously. I have to give credit to the government. The schemes like the EIS scheme and SEIS and other programs that are going on in Europe have really encouraged the small angel investor to get involved in this, which has created the capital necessary to create the startup. And we see, in the UK especially, we've seen a great success in the fintech market. Clearly, we had a fintech capability here with the financial markets here, so it was a natural progression. And so for us, we see the exact same thing happening in deep tech. We have the technology, as I was mentioning, we have the innovation, we have the young minds here that are going to be able to work in these companies. So it is a natural progression for deep tech, we believe, to take off, just as the fintech sector is taking off here as well. So I don't think there's anything stopping. I don't think we have to catch up to the US. I think we are on an acceleration curve, our own acceleration curve. And this is particularly why Block decided to set up in UK. I mean, you can hear my accent, I'm American, so we could have gone back. But really, we thought the knee of the curve was really starting here in the UK, and Block wanted to take advantage of that.
Yeah, great. And it's nice that you've mentioned fintech, because Block's portfolio includes exposure to AI, quantum encryption, as well as fintech, amongst others. What other sorts of companies and themes has Block been investing in?
Well, thank you. Block really concentrates on what we call the 4 pillars. And these are the foundations of technology that actually have been the foundation of technology for some time, and we believe will be the foundation of technology going forward. So this is connectivity, cloud, security, and data science. And if you really think it's about the management of data through the life cycle. And I know the common phrase, there's money in data. That we believe that is true. So these are the areas that we focus on. And if you take another sort of view of that, we concentrate on things in the sort of telecoms and compute sectors. And this is no surprise. This is around Vodafone and ARM. And Block really believes that when we invest, we need to add value beyond the cash. Again, a very overly used term, but Block really believes that if we can't, we don't see why we should use that capital on that startup versus another one. So we'll see expansion in that. We will do, more AI. I think we haven't done as much in security, because security has been a very, actually a difficult area, because you start to get on a treadmill and you're always having to keep up with the latest, breakages or hacks in the world. And so, but you'll see us do more in those areas. but also we'll probably spend more time in sort of the hardware areas. We can see opportunities where there's just an untapped space in things where most VCs would find, again, a bit more risky in investing in hardware. And I think Bloc will take a risk-adjusted view on that based on our experiences to invest. So again, across the board, the key pillars. And again, I think what we have shown with the pandemic is actually telecom infrastructure has probably been somewhat underinvested in for quite a number of years. And when everybody was going home and remote working, and I think flexible working will last. I think we'll see a lot more people get back in the office, but they'll be much more flexible. The stress that that's going to create on the overall network infrastructure is going to take new innovation and new investment. And so I think Bloc is very well positioned to go after that, given again the strong Vodafone background that we got within the team.
And the number of last mile technologies that are being tested and potentially being rolled out over the next months, years. It's going to be fascinating, a fascinating fight, I think.
It is, and I can't. So I bike to work, and I must go by at least 4 or 5 construction areas where they're digging up the road to lay some more fiber. And actually, one of our investments, Ferritech, is specifically targeted at overcoming that. It's a fixed wireless access chip company, and this is about using very ultra high bandwidth wireless to connect to the internet, rather than having to have the road dug up and lay a cable outside and disrupt traffic and with the significant cost. But we need that. I mean, we have an insatiable consumption of data, and the moment the bandwidth is available, we'll find a way to use it. So we must keep up that path and that innovation to enable people to consume that bandwidth, because we'll find ways to use it.
So turning to returns now, so you've talked about the companies, but what sort of returns have these investments generated to date? And what sort of portfolio returns do you expect them to make over the relevant time horizon, the investment horizon?
So generally, we have a view. We target a 3 to 5 times investment. So on average, 4 times investment, or a MOIC, or multiple on invested capital, and whenever we're putting together an investment proposition. And I think over the time we will very well stick to that. And actually, I think we'll be able to exceed that on some of our investments. Overall, we're running at a sort of 30% unrealized IRR right now. We probably will see some realizations in the coming months. So we'll start to see that some of that become realized IRR. And in general, we see that trend continuing. Again, with deep tech, some of these can take longer. They take more sort of seed investments, maybe 2, 3, 4 seed investments. But then once they start to get that commercial traction coming through, we can see the uplifts in their rounds and their valuations coming through. And actually, again, because we're now coming out of the pandemic, we're seeing life come back in the commercial, or the commercialization market. We can see that in 2022, we would expect a number of our startups that weren't necessarily able to do fresh rounds. We, again, thankfully, there was the future fund, the ability to use, government co-investment opportunities to invest in the startups and extend their runways. But now those runways it's time to take those companies back out for new rounds. And we can see 2022 as being quite an exciting time for our portfolio. We can see a number of up rounds on the horizon.
What is next for Bloc, and how do you see Bloc evolving over the next few years?
I think what you'll see from Bloc is an acceleration. I mean, we're on a growth curve. We've doubled the team size during the pandemic, so that was what was quite good. I think we'll continue to expand the headcount as we bring on more team members. And really what you'll see out of Bloc is an acceleration in the investment velocity. Our historic, we've been doing somewhere between 2 to 4 investments per year. I think you'll see a doubling of that coming in the future years. And then beyond that, I think what you'll see is we'll do more expansion outside of the UK into a more European investments. Okay. We think the European market is just as untapped as the UK market was. Innovation doesn't just happen in London. We see it, broadly across the UK and broadly across, some innovation centers in Europe. So I think you'll see us expanding and really starting to hold true for what we are targeting, which is to build Bloc into a global brand for investing in technology in Europe. And I think that's what you'll see from us in the coming years. And I think what we'll look at is new models as well to help us with that investment velocity. I mean, I think we're looking at, possibly generating a more hybrid structure within Bloc. We've got our balance sheet investments, what we're doing today. We are looking at potentially bringing on a more traditional fund type structure to enable us more capital at one time to increase that investment velocity. So I think you'll see Bloc evolve and change. And again, but all of it is about accelerating. And that's our profile today, is we're on an acceleration profile.
Fantastic. So in other words, deploying different pools of capital to address the deep tech opportunity.
Exactly. With the balance sheet, you have a limited amount of capital because it's very, very expensive capital because it's based on equity. Where a fund, you're taking on larger amounts of capital to deploy over a shorter period of time, and so you can be a bit more. You can do more with that capital at a particular time. So I think that's what we're looking at. Is there's different models. We will never lose our view that deep tech is a long-term prospect. So as long as we can hold true to that theme and that ideal, we'll look at different models that can augment that progress.
And as you say, that there are many different models in the market. And over the past few months, we've seen companies such as Seraphim Space IT and Forward Partners come to market. Joining Augmentum Fintech and Draper Esprit, which itself has grown dramatically and now moved to the main market. VCs have historically been very private vehicles. So, what has changed? Why are we now seeing so many VCs coming to, going public? And in good time, do you think that might be an option for Bloc Ventures?
Yeah, I think maybe if I take the second half of your question first. I mean, it has always been Bloc's intent to the way our model works is we sell shares in Bloc to raise capital and then deploy. So for one of our investors to actually realize an investment return, they have to have a mechanism to sell their shares. So that's always been, top of mind and obvious. And so, that can happen through secondaries, maybe even a trade sale, or most obviously IPO. And I think the reason that IPO has become a more natural progression for venture today is it exposes VCs to other pools of capital. If you're a private VC, you're on the same family market circuit that every other private VC is on, and therefore the competition is much higher for that capital. At least in the public markets, where, as you say, venture has not been as exposed, I think you now seeing more exposure to other pools of capital, the public markets, and that I think is a very exciting prospect. For Bloc, we can see that markets is something we'll evaluate in the coming years. It'll depend on the maturity, the market, and where we are in our own life cycle. But all of it is leading to where our common goal is to build Bloc into a billion-pound company, and all of us at Bloc are focused on creating that value.
Fantastic. Well, that sounds like a great vision for the future. So on that note, Bruce, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much indeed. Bruce Beckloff, CEO of Bloc Ventures.
Richard, thanks for your time today. And thank you to Edison for taking the time to talk to me.